This is Matthew Kratter's Bitcoin University. Today I want to answer the question, is Tether a new American CBDC? And this video is a follow-up to the last two videos, how Tether helps to fund the US government and the new Bitcoin dollar system. And I'll link to both of those in the description notes below. Now, on the surface, this seems like an absurd claim to say that Tether is like a CBDC. CBDC stands, of course, for central bank digital currency. CBDCs are a form of digital fiat, surveillable, programmable fiat issued by a central bank. It's in the word, it's in the name, central bank digital currency. And by contrast, Tether is a private corporation, not a central bank. So isn't it pretty misleading to try to smear USDT, which is the US dollar stablecoin that's issued by Tether? Isn't it pretty misleading to try to smear it with the label of CBDC? As Powell told us yesterday, there are no plans currently to roll out a CBDC in the US. Powell said yesterday we need to go to Congress in order to authorize this, and we have no plan to do that. Now let's back up and do some necessary context here. There are limits to what the US government can legally do under the Constitution to spy on and surveil its own citizens, especially after things like the Snowden revelations and the public gradually waking up to the activities of the NSA, the FBI, and the CIA. So the US government cannot legally spy on you as an American citizen or resident, though it still often does, and sometimes it gets in trouble in the courts for doing so. U.S. government can't legally spy on you as an American, but companies like Twitter, X, Meta, Google, Palantir, OpenAI, Clearview AI, they're all allowed to spy on you, and in fact, you give them explicit permission to do so when you agree to their terms and conditions, and then proceed to share your whole life online. And companies like Palantir and OpenAI and Clearview AI, they scrape data from everywhere as well, from the real world and online as well. So even if you don't opt in, you're still being monitored by Palantir. Then what happens? The US government just buys your data from these companies. Problem solved. The Fourth Amendment successfully bypassed. Warrantless surveillance can be fun. And thank goodness we don't live in East Germany or the USSR where the governments spied on their citizens. Likewise, the US government cannot ban free speech, but they can have big tech platforms do their dirty work for them by deplatforming annoying people who criticize the regime or its policies, as we saw a lot in 2020. The public square online is always being censored, now less so on X today, but it certainly was censored a lot when it was Twitter, and it may be censored again in the future. The public square online is always being censored, but don't worry, you're still free to go to the center of your own public square, in meat space, in your village, in your town, in your city, and say whatever you want. Now, everyone's just going to be staring at their phones on social media, so they won't hear a word that you say, but at least technically your speech is not being stopped by the government. You still have free speech in America. So we can see here the tricks that are being used. You bypass the First Amendment by having corporations do the government's bidding and silence free speech in the very place where almost all of it takes place these days, online. You bypass the Fourth Amendment by having corporations spy on the American people and then sell the data to the government and intelligence agencies. So how might this apply to money and US dollar CBDCs? Before we analyze that, I just ask you, if you're enjoying this video so far, please help to support this channel, because I've been making some enemies left and right lately, it seems, with my Tether videos. Please subscribe, like, comment, and share. This really helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Now, Trump and others have promised that they will never allow a CBDC under their watch. CBDC being digital, programmable, surveillable, easily frozen fiat money issued by a central bank. And I agree with Trump that that kind of monstrosity is definitely going to be a tough sell in a place like the US. So what's the best way to sneak one in if you wanted to sneak one in? It's easy. You just use the same playbook that you already used to bypass the First and Fourth Amendments that we've been talking about. You outsource the issuance of that surveillance money to a corporation, and then you have the government control that corporation. And voila, you now have programmable surveillance money. It's not directly issued by the central bank, but it's effectively the same thing. It's money that can be easily turned on and off at a granular level if someone in the government doesn't like you. So now let's see if we can come up with any candidates for this private company that the government will use to roll out the equivalent of a CBDC. I can actually think of a company that's been working very hard lately to keep the US government happy. That company is called Tether, and in December of 2023, they announced that they've onboarded U.S. Secret Service and the FBI to their platform. I imagine they onboard the CIA as well. They're probably not going to make an announcement about that. And then also in December of last year, Tether proactively froze a bunch of OFAC sanctioned wallets and addresses in order to make the U.S. Treasury and OFAC happy. And this has been very good for Tether's market cap. The market cap of USDT, which is their stablecoin, has been skyrocketing in the past few years and is now approaching $100 billion, which makes them very close in terms of the amount of treasuries they're purchasing to countries like Germany or Mexico. Now, this theory draws on the work, as I've been saying, the work of Whitney Webb and Mark Goodwin that I've been covering in the past few videos. Their most recent article is great about Trump's speech at the Bitcoin conference. And I focus especially, I'll link to this in the description notes below, but right here I want to focus especially on their hypothesis, which I'm taking from them, stable coins to entrench U.S. financial hegemony. And here's a quote from that article, quote, "With stablecoins being just as programmable as CBDCs, the differences between stablecoins and a CBDC would revolve largely around whether the private or public sector is issuing them, as both would retain the same functionality in terms of surveillance and programmability that have led many to view such currencies as threats to freedom and privacy. Thus, Trump's rejection of CBDCs but embrace of dollar stablecoins on Saturday shows a rejection of direct digital currency issuance by the Federal Reserve, which is the central bank in the U.S., not a rejection, and this is the important point, not a rejection of surveillable, programmable money." And in this video clip from his speech at the Nashville Bitcoin conference, Trump actually appears to not even know what a stablecoin is, calling them stable coins.
Regulatory clarity, we will create a framework to enable the safe and responsible expansion of stable coins. Do you know what a stable coin is? Does anybody know? Please raise your hand. Allowing us to extend the dominance of the U.S. dollar to new.
And that's the key point there. He says allowing us to extend the dominance of the U.S. dollar. Extending the dominance of the U.S. dollar probably should not be the number one goal for Bitcoiners. Now, what's the end game here? Weaker fiat currencies are failing left and right all over the world in places like Lebanon, Turkey, Egypt, Syria, we've seen over the past few years, and many, many other places. And the people in these countries desperately need sound money to protect their savings. So should we give them the best money ever discovered or created, Bitcoin? No, that's no fun. Let's give them US dollars in the form of USD stable coins like USDT. So for example, have the Syrians buy USDT, then Tether buys more US treasuries to back that USDT. Then the CIA and Department of quote-unquote Defense, it's really the Department of War, which is what it used to be called, the CIA and the Department of Defense can use that government funding to destabilize more regimes in the Middle East and all around the world, leading to more destabilized countries that want more USDT. So you have this virtuous or vicious circle. It's a beautiful thing. US dollar hegemony is preserved and maybe even expanded. There's now an infinite bid for US government toxic bond sludge. The CIA and DoD get to continue going around the world doing their thing. The military-industrial complex is happy. The crypto industry is happy. And American politicians like Trump can still virtue signal about how they would never allow CBDC on U.S. soil. Meanwhile, a new programmable, surveillable money, complete with the FBI, Secret Service, and other intelligence agencies having been onboarded, a new programmable, surveillable money has now been rolled out globally. And you, dear American, you can use USDT on your phone whenever you want to as well. Tether will be tracking every purchase that you make. Tether will be tracking every USDT that you earn, and they will gladly give all this private information to the US government, because if they don't, Tether will be shut down overnight or maybe completely taken over by the US Treasury or the Fed. Is Tether the new American CBDC? Not yet, but I think that this is exactly, I agree with Mark Goodwin and Whitney Webb, this is exactly how an American CBDC will look. It won't be issued by the Fed. It'll be issued through a private company like Tether, and the puppet strings will still be controlled by the Washington, D.C. swamp. You'll hear people say, why are you such a stablecoin hater? It's the free market at work, don't you know? This is just what people want. They want dollars, so we should give them dollars. And this is what the CIA and the DoD and the U.S. Treasury want as well. Again, this is not just a theory at this point. Tether is actively censoring transactions and employing chain surveillance. We already talked about them freezing all OFAC-sanctioned wallets Here we can see that they've actively been engaging with surveillance companies like Chain Analysis. And then we have Paolo Arduino, who is the CEO of Tether, yesterday promoting a speech from Howard Lutnick, who spoke at the Bitcoin conference and spoke how much he likes Tether. It turns out that both of them are invested in a spy satellite company called Satellogic. This is being funded in part by Tether and Paolo Arduino, as well as Howard Lutnick sitting on the board. So this is something else they have in common. It's pretty weird when you think about it for a crypto company to be very interested in spy satellites. Why is Tether investing in spy satellites? It's almost as if they're working hand in hand with the US government and other governments to try to derail the Bitcoin revolution by increasing US dollar adoption and surveillance instead. Next time you talk to a Bitcoiner, especially a prominent Bitcoiner, consider asking them if they're receiving any funding or any grants directly or indirectly from Tether. You might be surprised by the answer and understand a little bit better why Tether has been getting a free pass from Bitcoiners. As for my own disclaimers, I'm not being paid by anyone except YouTube ad revenue, and hopefully I don't choose the ad, so hopefully they're not coming from Tether. And I'm also paid by the revenue that I get from selling Bitcoin education directly from my course, which I'll link to in the description notes below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video, and let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.